Am I the jerk for standing up to the PTA Karens who tried to push me out? Post 1. I want to start by saying that I never meant to cause a spectacle. I joined the PTA for one reason only: to make sure my son had the resources and opportunities I never had growing up. That's it. I didn't go into this looking for drama. But of course, drama found me. And apparently, depending on which parent you ask, I'm now some sort of divisive figure in the community. So, I'm male, and I'm gay. I don't make a secret of it, but I also don't lead every conversation with it. My life is my life, my son is my priority, and the PTA was supposed to be a way to help out at school without it turning into some kind of circus. I'm also financially comfortable, and yes, people comment on that more than I'd like. I built my career carefully. I worked hard, I invested well, and because of that, when the PTA needed funding for things like new uniforms or extra supplies, I was in a position to help. I never wanted recognition for it, but the fact that I could write a check where others had to pass the hat around seemed to rub some people the wrong way. At first, things went fine. The principal welcomed me, the teachers were thrilled to have more active parents, and even most of the other moms, yes, the so-called Karens, were polite enough. I sat through the meetings, raised points about budgets, even suggested a few fundraisers that actually worked. For a while, I thought maybe, just maybe, I had found a corner of the community where my son and I fit in. And then one Saturday, everything shifted. I was out at the farmer's market with my boyfriend. Nothing scandalous, just holding hands, laughing, picking out vegetables. That's it. But of course, a couple of the moms from the PTA spotted us. They didn't say anything at the time, but by Monday the whispers had started. Suddenly little things changed. I'd walk into a meeting and the chatter would stop. People who had been warm and chatty the week before were now stiff, polite, fake. My suggestions were brushed aside with excuses like, "Maybe that's not realistic for our community," or "We'll table that for later." I knew what was happening. I've been through it before. The fake smiles, the subtle digs, the way people who were fine with me on paper suddenly had a problem once they were reminded I was gay and not just a walking checkbook. And sure enough, within a few weeks, the gloves came off. One of the louder moms, I'll call her Denise, made a comment in front of the entire room about how the PTA shouldn't become a platform for anyone's lifestyle. I was stunned. I hadn't even brought my boyfriend to a meeting. But in their eyes, just existing, just being myself, was suddenly a lifestyle agenda. That's the point where the lines were drawn. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm not always the calmest person. I'm highly emotional, and yes, I cried that night after the meeting. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was exhausted. Exhausted from fighting the same battle over and over, just in different packaging. But I didn't step back. If anything, I dug in harder. And that's when things really escalated. I'll save that for part 2. Post 2. The thing about these moms is they never come right out and say what they mean. It's all coded language and polite daggers. One week I was such an asset to the team, and the next I was dominating the conversation and making others uncomfortable. It was whiplash. Denise, of course, was at the center of it. She started floating little comments in meetings like, "We should make sure all our fundraising activities are family-friendly," with this pointed glance in my direction. At first I didn't even register it, but then another mom chimed in, "Yes, we don't want the PTA associated with anything inappropriate." That word, inappropriate. As if my existence was somehow contaminating bake sales and book fairs. Then came the whispers outside the meetings. A friend of mine, one of the few who had my back, told me that Denise had been making the rounds, telling anyone who would listen that I was turning the PTA into a platform, and that parents were concerned about what kind of example I was setting. Apparently me holding hands with my boyfriend at the farmer's market was now a threat to the moral fabric of the school. Meanwhile, money kept cropping up in these conversations. The same people who were happy enough to let me foot the bill for new soccer jerseys or donate auction items suddenly acted like my contributions were a problem. Denise actually said, "We don't want one person buying influence." Buying influence? Half the stuff the school had last semester wouldn't exist without my checks. I'll admit, I broke down after one of those meetings. I came home, shut the door, and cried into my hands until my son came over and hugged me. I hated that he saw me like that. But he's old enough to understand that sometimes adults are cruel for no reason. I promised him I wouldn't give up, and he just said, "Good. Because you're the only one who actually cares about the kids." Out of the mouths of babes. So I didn't quit. I kept showing up. I kept volunteering. And the more I did, the more desperate Denise and her crew got. They tried to push a new ethics policy through the PTA. Basically, a thinly veiled rule that would have given them grounds to review members' outside behavior. The whole thing was so obvious it was laughable. But laughable or not, it was a direct attack. And I knew if I didn't fight back, they'd steamroll me like they always steamroll anyone who doesn't fit their mold. So I fought, and things only got uglier from there. Part 3 coming. Post 3. The night of that meeting is burned into my memory. I had already heard through the grapevine that Denise and her circle were planning to bring up their so-called ethics policy. Part of me wanted to skip it, avoid the humiliation of being cornered in front of the entire room. But then I thought about my son, and how he'd hugged me after one of my breakdowns and told me not to quit. So I walked in, heart pounding, tears threatening before anything even started, and sat down at that folding table like I belonged there. Because I did. Sure enough, halfway through the agenda, Denise cleared her throat in that smug way she does and announced that she and a few other concerned parents had drafted a new policy. She read it aloud like it was some grand decree, all about ensuring that members of the PTA reflect the values of our school community in and out of school settings. Every line was vague enough to be slippery, but specific enough to be pointed right at me. I felt my cheeks burning as she went on, and I knew everyone could see I was emotional. My throat tightened, my eyes watered, and I could feel people waiting for me to break down or storm out. That's when I stood up. My chair scraped so loudly on the tile it made everyone jump. I said, voice shaking but loud enough for the whole room. If this is about me, then say it. Don't hide behind vague language. Don't pretend this is about ethics, when the real issue is that some of you saw me holding hands with my boyfriend and decided that makes me unfit to serve on this board. The silence was deafening. Denise sputtered, trying to deny it, but I cut her off. I've donated more to this school than anyone in this room. I've spent hours organizing fundraisers, selling tickets, setting up chairs. Not because I want power, but because I love my kid and I care about all the kids. And now you're telling me I'm a bad influence because I love someone? Because I'm gay? My voice cracked on that last word, and I could feel the tears finally slatting down my face. For a moment, I thought it was over. That I'd just confirmed everything they say about me being too emotional. But then a teacher spoke up. She said, "I don't care who you love. You've done more for this PTA than most of us put together." A couple of other parents nodded. One dad actually clapped. Denise tried to regain control, insisting it wasn't personal, but no one was buying it anymore. The vote on the policy was tabled, indefinitely. I sat down shaking, wiping my eyes, but I knew I'd just drawn a line in the sand. Of course, the Karens weren't done. If anything, they were more determined now that I had stood up to them. And that's when they decided to take it higher, straight to the school board. Part 4 coming. Post 4. I should have known Denise wouldn't accept defeat. People like her never do. When she couldn't get her ethics policy passed at the PTA level, she and her friends took it to the next arena, the school board. I found out when I got an official-looking email saying a concern had been filed against me as a parent volunteer. My heart sank. It used phrases like inappropriate representation of the school and concerns raised by multiple parents. Reading it, I felt my hands start to shake. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the screen, tears already rolling down my cheeks before I even realized. It felt like everything I'd worked for, not just with the PTA but with building stability for my son, was about to be ripped away. The board scheduled a meeting and of course word spread. By the time I walked into that room, it felt like half the town had shown up, whispering and glancing at me like I was some kind of criminal. I sat there, alone, waiting for my name to be called, while Denise and her friends sat in a neat little row, smug and confident. When it was my turn, they stood up first. Denise gave this long, sanctimonious speech about how the PTA needed role models who reflected traditional family values. She never said the word gay, but every word dripped with it. Her friend followed up, implying I was using my money to influence school decisions and push my lifestyle. By the time they finished, I was already crying. Not loud sobs, but tears streaking down my face no matter how many times I tried to wipe them away. When the board chair asked if I wanted to respond, my voice shook so badly I thought it would give out. But I forced the words out anyway. I said, "I'm here because I care about my son and every child in this school. I've given my time, my money, and my heart to make this place better. And I am being targeted not because I did anything wrong, but because of who I am and who I love." I had to stop to breathe because my throat was closing up. If that's what you want to punish, then say it out loud. Don't hide it behind words like influence and ethics. Just say it. The room was silent. You could feel the tension. Then, slowly, a couple of teachers started clapping. Then more. Even some parents who had been quiet before spoke up. "He's done more for this school than most of us. My kids adore him. This is about bias, not behavior." Denise's smug look faltered. The board chair cleared their throat and said there was no evidence of misconduct and that the matter was closed. Just like that. All that scheming, all those whispers. And officially nothing came of it. I walked out shaking, tears still flowing, but this time from relief. I had stood in front of the entire community, been accused of things that cut right to the bone, and somehow I was still standing. Of course, Denise wasn't going to take the loss quietly. If she couldn't win with rules or with the board, she was going to go back to her favorite weapon, gossip. That's where Part 5 picks up. Post 5. I wish I could say the school board shutting down their complaint ended it, but that would be giving Denise and her crew too much credit. If they couldn't win with policies or procedures, they were going to win with whispers. It started small. A mom I barely knew stopped saying hello to me at drop-off. Another unfollowed me on Facebook. Then came the messages, screenshots from friends showing what was being passed around in private group chats. Denise had turned me into the main character of some morality tale. According to her, I was unstable, dramatic, too emotional to be trusted with kids. And of course, she sprinkled in the word inappropriate every chance she got, never saying exactly what she meant, but letting everyone fill in the blanks. Everywhere I went, I could feel the stares. At the grocery store. At the soccer field. People looking at me like they were trying to figure out if I was guilty of something. My son even noticed. One night he asked me, "Dad, why do people act weird around us now?" That cut deeper than anything. I cried right there at the dinner table, trying to explain to him that some people judge us not for what we've done, but for who we are. He hugged me and said, "Then they're the bad guys, not you." I swear, kids see through the nonsense faster than adults ever will. But here's the thing Denise didn't count on. The same social media she used to smear me was also the same place where people who knew the truth could speak up. Teachers posted about how much time I'd volunteered. Parents whose kids I'd helped fundraise for posted about how I had bought uniforms or covered fees. Slowly, little by little, the tide started to shift. The gossip didn't disappear. It never does. But the more they tried to paint me as some unstable menace, the more obvious it became to everyone else that it wasn't about me at all. It was about their prejudice. And the louder they got, the more desperate they looked. Still, I cried most nights. I won't pretend I was some unshakable hero. It hurt. It drained me. But I kept showing up for my son, for the kids, for the school. And the more I did, the more people saw through the Karen's performance. The breaking point came when Denise tried one last stunt, which I'll explain in Part 6. Post 6. Denise couldn't leave well enough alone. After the school board shut her down and her gossip campaign started looking more desperate than damaging, she pulled one last stunt. And it ended up being the thing that finally broke her. It was the Spring Carnival, the biggest fundraiser of the year. I'd been involved in organizing it for months, buying supplies, handling permits, even covering the cost of a bounce house when the budget came up short. My name was all over the spreadsheets, but I didn't care about credit. I just wanted the kids to have a good day. Denise decided it was the perfect time to make her stand. She and her little crew cornered me near the raffle booth and started loudly accusing me of trying to buy influence and making the school dependent on my money. She kept raising her voice so other parents would hear, going on about how the PTA should represent real families, not lifestyles. It was ugly, obvious, and meant to humiliate me. Here's the part she didn't count on. People were tired of it. Parents who had been watching from the sidelines finally stepped in. One mom shouted back, "He's the reason this carnival even happened." Another dad said, "If you don't like his money, maybe you should have paid for the bounce house yourself." Even one of the teachers, who's usually quiet as a mouse, told Denise, "You're embarrassing yourself. Sit down." The crowd clapped. Right there in front of everyone, Denise lost control of the narrative. Her face went red. She stammered something about just wanting fairness and stormed off. I stood there shaking, tears in my eyes. But this time they weren't just from pain. It was relief. Vindication. For once, people had seen through her performance. After that day, things shifted. Denise quietly stepped back from the PTA, not officially, but she stopped showing up. The gossip fizzled. And me? I kept volunteering. I kept writing checks when I could, running booths, hauling chairs, doing the work I'd been doing all along. Only now, instead of side eyes and whispers, I got nods of thanks. It didn't erase the months of attacks. It didn't erase the nights I cried at my kitchen table, wondering if I should just quit. But it proved something. Sometimes you don't have to scream to win. Sometimes you just have to outlast the people who want to break you. And in the end, Denise lost. My son got to see me stand my ground, and that more than anything made it worth it.